What's going on? Welcome back to Fanatic Journey. So today we're going to talk to you about ChargePoint. I want to go over some of the current data points. They also do have their earnings coming up this week that I wanted to break it down for you, what the current estimates are and what you need to really pay attention to. Before I get into any of that, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up. And with that said, let's get right to it. So it did go down 4.55% on Friday, so piggybacked off of the market's sell-off. Very volatile, so $1.80 the high, $1.63 the low, and 25 million shares were traded, 12.3 is the average. Despite that looking good, kind of insinuating big money was getting in, that wasn't the case. A lot of the volume being done was linked to algorithmic trading, not necessarily long investors, as you can kind of see. So there hasn't been any transactions above $100,000 on the secondary market for a very long time. And that's something that's, in my opinion, really attributed to ChargePoint going down, because you do need that institutions to really add support levels and not really rely on just what AI is doing. So that's kind of the unfortunate aspect of ChargePoint. And there hasn't been any recent press releases, SEC filings. I've already talked about this in a previous video, so the definitive 14A and all the other fun jazz. So in reality, the next big thing for ChargePoint is going to be their earnings, and that is slated for June the 5th after hours. It's actually like right after the market does close, so 1:30 Pacific basically. So I'll probably try to live stream that one. So if you guys are interested, let me know in the comments below. I can definitely put together something for that. But as far as some expectations, currently negative 12 cents for the earnings per share, and that does equate to about 17% growth year over year. So that's good. That again is something that you really want to pay attention to, is for them to be cutting on expenses. That's something they stated to the last two earnings that they've been doing, and for the most part they've kind of lived up to that aspect. So this is why ChargePoint is where it is and not sub $1, is because they're actually trying to do something different, both by cutting expenses and operationally. And that negative 12 cents is a consensus based off of 6 analysts. And then just wanted to point this out. I know it's kind of far-fetched. Well, not far-fetched, but pretty much a long time period from now. But you do see Q4 2025, or I guess January 2025 release, you do see it as a consensus negative 6 cents. So realistically, first half of 2025, maybe they actually might be hitting profitability. This is based on analysts once again, so they could be wrong, but definitely something interesting to keep in mind. And then for revenue though, this is where ChargePoint usually does get beaten down, but 105.64 million is the estimate. That is a 19% reduction year over year. So again, definitely they have had a lot of growing pains, but they always attribute that to just EV demand. And I think the market has been somewhat calling their BS for the most part, because a lot of the stats does justify that EVs are doing very, very well, in fact. So that's something to keep in mind. Number of analysts that are giving this rating, or as a consensus, is 13. So just watch for them to hopefully beat on their revenue. They did actually, based on their last earnings right here, they did miss on their revenue, very minor, and they did beat on their earnings per share. But still, I feel like ChargePoint falls under the criteria that the market might be very forgiving for earnings per share and revenue if it is somewhat in line or a minor miss. Rather, they will be paying attention to future guidance. So what is ChargePoint anticipating for the next several quarters? And does the market get a sense that they are going to be at least obtaining profitability in the first half of 2025? Because if that is the case, then yeah, I think a lot of things could be overlooked. One thing as well to pay attention to very closely is their new outstanding share count, to see exactly what magnitude of dilution they have been doing. So something to kind of consider, because just to quickly go over their finances, their cash flow moved to quarterly. You do see, based on their last earnings, they burnt through 41.5 million from operations. Prior quarter to that was 96.9. So they have really relied on their S3 quite significantly. Obviously, in case you guys don't know, that is dilution. So that's kind of the close notes of things that you need to watch for. Just pay attention to if they are still kind of talking on cutting expenses and whatever else. I haven't seen any layoffs. Talking of layoffs, a lot of EVs have been moving towards that, even though the last year they've been focusing on cutting of expenses. They are still starting to lay off this quarter. So be interesting to see what ChargePoint does in that regard. So that's kind of a quick close notes. Again, if you're wanting me to live stream that, I can definitely do so. Going over some of the data points. On Friday, shorts did return 1.12 million shares. 26.46% of the free float is being shorted. Works out to be 103.68 million shares overall are being shorted. Utilization 92.15. Cost to borrow average is 9.48. And just to look on the actual chart, you can kind of see that shorts did get back in somewhat. You can kind of see it did have a high of 28.03, so it's starting to go back slightly, but you never know, especially with PCE numbers coming out last Friday, as well as their earnings coming up. You could see a lot of volatility coming from shorts. So once again, let me know your thoughts on that. 87,000 in calls, 47,000 in puts. Based on the sentiment though, 58% of all the options being done on Friday were optimistic and bullish. And of the call options that are being purchased, you do see a consensus for it to be above $1.50 and to encumber their earnings. It looks like a potential high of around $2 to $2.50 is kind of expected. So kind of optimistic when it comes to that. And then looking at puts, you do see a consensus for it to be sub $1.50. So in my opinion, especially to encumber their earnings, the risk versus reward is very much in favor of upside. So something to kind of consider. On the actual chart itself, let's break that down. So with it at $1.68, it is trading between this pivot and this R1. So $1.49 will be that next strong support that you'll want to watch for it to hold going into next week. Vice versa, $1.77 will be that next strong resistance point / target. So kind of stuck within that range on Friday, and actually in all honesty the last tail part of last week has been. So especially with this upcoming week, there's going to be a hell of a lot of volatility. And dependent on what is said in their earnings, you could see a pull down below this point right here. So if this $1.49 doesn't hold, then this is where you could see another 52-week and all-time low being hit, because $1.21 is that low right here. So this S1, at least we do know, is a strong support. So something to kind of keep in mind. But in my opinion, just a complete estimate, I'm a little bit more cautiously optimistic on ChargePoints, especially for those of you that do remember, I think 2 quarters ago, they did say in Q4 of 2024, this is where they will have a new kind of big product. They didn't want to talk on it. Last quarter, they didn't even bring it up, I don't believe. So that new big product hopefully will be a game changer for ChargePoint and really propel it higher. So hopefully this time around, analysts remember that and ask questions, or if they just voluntarily bring that up, that might actually incentivize some institutions to get in based on that and propel it back into the $2 range. So something just to kind of watch for. On the actual chart itself, so it is right now lower percentile of the Bollinger Band, but for the longest time it has just been wedge bound between that 50 and 100-day moving average, so kind of just right here. For those of you that do options, this volatile stock and kind of trading within a set range is absolutely key. Amazing stuff. At the same time, you do see stochastic at 32, so that is considered very oversold. So if there's a good piece of news that does come out, or as a result from their earnings, or just stand alone, then you could see a rush of value investors getting in, propelling it higher. And you did see a number of retail investors slowly buying the dip over this last several trading days. So kind of good stuff for that. Let me know your thoughts on ChargePoint. Are you still buying it? Are you selling it? What's your expectations for this upcoming earnings? So let me know your thoughts on all of that. Hopefully everyone's having an amazing weekend thus far. One final thing, take advantage of this promo. Simply sign up for a new account, throw $100 at it, and they give you 5 free stocks, each valued up to $2,000. So pretty kick-ass deal. Link in the description below and also the comments. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.